In our first example, we have a block that is about to move, and we are going to find the coefficient of friction, or otherwise known as mu of s. In our given, we have the weight as 10 Newton and the force going to the right, which is 5 Newton. As we said before, we have to isolate the box itself, and we will write the external forces given. The first is the push or pull, and since we have the force, which is 5, so we will write it here. The next is the weight, and since it is already in newtons, we're just going to retain it. Next is the normal force, which is written as small n, and next is the friction, which is F of S max is equals to mu s n. Since it is indicated that the block is about to move. And now what we are going to do is draw two axes. And since the block is going to the right, this would be the positive and this would be negative. And in the y-axis, it isn't important where is positive and where is negative. So we're just going to write it as that. And first, we're going to start here, and we're going to find the value of n. So f of y, summation of f of y is equals to 0, and summation of f of y is, since this is going up, n would be positive, and since the weight is going down, it would be negative. So minus 10 Newton is equals to 0. Therefore, we would have the value of n, which is 10 newtons as well. Going to the next axis, we would have summation of f of x is equals to 0, since it is still not moving, it is just about to move. And we would write it as negative usn, since the friction is going to the negative side, plus positive 5 newtons is equals to 0. Substituting the normal force from the previous computation, we would have negative mu s times 10 plus 5 is equals to 0. The next thing we are going to do is transfer 5 to the other side. So we would have mu s 10 is equals to negative 5. And we would divide both sides with negative 10. So cancel negative side, cancel 10. And therefore, the value of mu s is equals to 1/2. So now, in our next example, we have a block that is moving to the left, and what we need to find is its acceleration. As we said before, the first thing we are going to do is draw its isolated body diagram, which is the block, and we need to enumerate the external forces acting upon it. So the first one is the push or pull, so we have 4 newtons. The next is the weight. Since it is already in newtons, we have 10 here. And then the normal force and the friction, which is written as n, and the friction. Since the block is moving to the left, it means that the friction would be going to the right, since it is opposite the slide. So what we would have is here as friction, such that f of k is equals to mu kn. The next step is that we will draw two axes, the x and y, and since the block is stated as moving to the left, the positive side would be here and the negative would be here. And the y-axis the positive side of the y-axis doesn't matter. So the first thing we're going to do is find n. So what we have here is that the summation of f of y is equals to 0. Therefore, n minus 10 newtons is equals to 0. N is here since it is going up, towards the positive, it will be positive. And since the 10 newtons is going to the negative side, it would be negative. Therefore, our value of n is 10. The next thing we're going to solve is the forces on the x-axis. Since it is stated that the block is moving, therefore our equation would be summation of f of x is equals to ma. In order to get the value of m, we have weight is equals to mg. Since the weight is given, which is 10 newton, and the acceleration due to gravity is already constant, which is 9.8, our value of m would be 10 divided by 9.8, which is equal to 10 divided by 9.8, 1.02. Since we have the value of m already, what we need to find is a. So the forces acting on the x-axis would be the friction and the push and pull. Since both of them are going to the negative side, we would have negative 4 newtons minus the UK is already given, which is 0.3, times n, which we solved before, so times 10 newton, is equals to the mass, which is 1.02 times A. Solving this, we would have negative 4 minus 0.3 times 10, which is negative 7 divided by 1.02 is equals to A. Therefore, our value of A would be negative 7 divided by 1.02 is equal to negative 6.86. Well, that's all for today. Hope you learned a lot. See you next time.